I was unaware that I had abandoned it in that place. The journal, modest and unpretentious, rested upon the coffee table, its supple leather cover bearing the gentle marks of time and frequent handling. I intended to stow it away, to conceal it as I always had, but when the doorbell rang, I hurried to respond and let it slip my mind. Upon my return to the living room, I found Nathan poised over the table. The journal spread open before him. "What is this?" he inquired, his tone airy yet inquisitive. A sharp intake of breath seized me, a wave of panic igniting within my chest. I hurried across the room, calling out to Nathan. "This matter is confidential." He glanced upward, taken aback by the edge in my voice. His gaze met mine briefly before returning to the journal, his demeanor transforming into something more tender. "Apologies," he remarked as he shut it with care. "I had no intention of intruding." I seized it from his grasp, holding it tightly against my heart as though it were a treasure beyond compare. My heart raced, and warmth flooded my cheeks, a vivid testament to my embarrassment. "It's nothing," I remarked, my voice more strained than I had meant it to be, "simply a long-standing practice." Nathan regarded me intently for a moment, a slight furrow forming on his brow. "I didn't read much," he said, his voice now a mere whisper, "just a handful of lines." Yet it seemed as though it held significance. I turned my gaze away, unable to meet his penetrating look. The journal lay in my hands, its weight a powerful reminder of the secrets it held, memories, confessions, pieces of my soul I had never shared with anyone else. "It's just a performance I put on," I finally confessed, my voice barely above a whisper, "to clear my mind." "I comprehend," he remarked, his tone filled with kindness and understanding. Upon seeing him, I was struck by the soft warmth that emanated from his face. Nathan had always exhibited a profound level of thoughtfulness, a sharp insight that distinguished him from those around him. In that moment, his gaze held a blend of curiosity and respect for my boundaries, creating a tightening sensation in my chest. "I shouldn't have left it out," I murmured, pulling the journal tighter against my chest. "It's okay," he said, a subtle smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Every individual carries within them mysteries they would rather shield from the scrutiny of the outside world." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. For a brief moment, I contemplated the significance of his words, the secrets he hid, the truths he carried within. As the moment faded, Nathan strolled into the kitchen, his hands tucked deep into the pockets of his jeans. "Just let me know if you need help with dinner," he said, his tone casual and relaxed as he looked over his shoulder. I watched him leave, my heart racing wildly, the journal pressed tightly to my chest. Nathan possessed an uncanny ability to surprise me, and this certainly wasn't the first time it had happened. From the very first moment I encountered him, it was evident that he had an extraordinary gift for that. This young man, who seemed to have matured in an instant, left me with the feeling that I had overlooked the entire process of his transformation. As he settled back into the house a few months prior, I comforted myself with the thought that this was just a temporary phase, that he would soon venture into yet another exciting new chapter of his life. In the months that ensued, his presence reshaped the house in ways I had never anticipated. For years, a deep tranquility surrounded this place, a quiet that penetrated your very essence, bestowing a feeling of antiquity that transcended your own age. After my husband's passing, I grew familiar with the silence that surrounded me, the gentle echo of my footsteps resonating in the hallway, and the long, lonely evenings spent in the company of a book and a glass of wine. Nathan breathed life into the house once more. The essence lay in the delicate nuances, the harmonious notes of his music drifting from above, the nonchalant arrangement of his sneakers left by the entrance, the fleeting instances when he would wander into the kitchen to exchange a few words as I cooked dinner. He filled the empty spaces that had persisted, so lonely, so lifeless for what felt like forever. Yet he also revealed insights about my own self. As I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, a flutter stirred in my chest, my heartbeat quickening, sparked by the warmth of his smile and the sound of his laughter. He stood there, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching me with a calm, thoughtful expression that appeared to contain a universe of unvoiced reflections. It fell short of expectations. I had knowledge of that. He was my stepson, for goodness sake. However, having that understanding did little to alleviate the challenge of being overlooked. Later that evening, sitting on the edge of my bed, the journal rested gently on my lap as I started to turn its pages. The writing displayed a degree of neatness, but at times it stumbled, revealing words that were raw and unpolished. I lingered on a solitary page, my breath catching as I took in the words I had crafted weeks before. A deep yearning stirs within me for the experience of genuinely embracing life. I yearn for the sensation of being acknowledged. The truth hit me like a sudden, painful jolt to the chest. For years, I had hidden those feelings, persuading myself that simply going through the motions was enough, that I could face each day without breaking down. However, with Nathan here, the intensity of his gaze and the way he interacted with me made it harder to keep those emotions at bay. I closed the journal, setting it down with care, my hands trembling just a bit. A sharp awareness of the danger that awaited me enveloped my thoughts. As I lay back in bed that night, staring at the ceiling overhead, a thought persisted in my mind. What might it feel like to embrace the experience of being genuinely visible again? The next morning, I found Nathan in the kitchen, relaxed against the counter, a mug of coffee held comfortably in his hand. As he scrolled through his phone, the soft morning light played in his hair, giving him a youthful aura, almost charmingly boyish. Yet, as he lifted his gaze to meet mine, his eyes revealed a profound depth that belied his youth. "Morning," he said, his tone airy, though a faint edge remained just below the surface. "Morning," I replied, my gaze wandering from his as I moved closer to the coffee pot. My hands trembled just a bit as I poured my drink, the memories of yesterday's happenings resonating clearly in my mind. I hoped he would choose not to bring it up. How wonderful it would be to just pretend it never happened. Nevertheless, Nathan had always been attentive to details. He set his mug down on the counter, saying, reflecting on yesterday, I found myself frozen, my fingers gripping the handle of my mug with a tense intensity. "What is there to say about it?" He shrugged, his tone casual yet inquisitive. "That journal, you appeared quite defensive of it." "It's private," I replied hastily, my tone more cutting than I had meant it to be. "I understand," he remarked, raising his hands in a gesture of feigned capitulation. "I'm not trying to intrude, he paused, his eyes reflecting a gentle understanding. I found myself pondering what secrets lie within that are so intimately guarded. I pivoted to confront him, my heart constricted. "Nathan, I mentioned before, it's merely a tool I employ to declutter my thoughts. It holds no significance." With a furrowed brow, he leaned in slightly, his arms crossed over his chest, exuding a sense of contemplation. It seemed to be a gentle whisper from his lips. I opened my mouth to object, but the intensity of his gaze rendered me speechless. It was devoid of discernment and interference. Rather, it represented a blend of inquisitiveness and care. "Nathan," I whispered, setting my mug down softly on the counter. "I'm not quite ready to delve into that topic at this moment." After a moment of contemplation, he responded gently, his voice calm and reassuring. "Should you ever wish to engage in conversation, rest assured that I am here for you." The sincerity in his voice and the depth of his gaze ignited a deep yearning within my heart. I nodded, struggling to find the right words to express my thoughts. In a brief moment, the silence surrounding us grew, dense and charged with energy. "I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable," he said at last, his voice now barely above a whisper. "I keep you in my thoughts, and that is enough." His words hung in the air, and I felt my breath catch. "I comprehend your feelings," I responded, my voice trembling slightly. Nathan hesitated, a brief glimmer of unexpressed ideas flitting through his thoughts. He finally acquiesced, raising his mug again. "All right," he said with a brighter tone. "I will hold back from intervening." I nodded, grateful for the brief reprieve. As he stepped out of the kitchen, a disquieting feeling remained, hinting that our conversation was far from over. Later that afternoon, I found myself in the living room, tidying up the magazines and throw pillows that seemed to multiply whenever Nathan was nearby. The journal was tucked away in my bedroom, but the resonance of his words lingered clearly in my thoughts. "Your well-being is important to me." Although he had spoken those words previously, this occasion bore a significance that felt uniquely profound. It bore a weight, a quiet depth that rendered me uncertain about how to traverse its intricacies. The sound of footsteps fading into the distance urged me to look over my shoulder, where I found Nathan standing in the doorway, his hands tucked away in his pockets. "You really don't need to tidy up after me, just so you know," he remarked, a subtle smile tugging at the edge of his lips. "It's not about you," I asserted, though my tone revealed a trace of doubt. He stepped into the room, moving with a measured and unhurried gait. "You do too much," he said softly. I released a quiet sigh, trying to brush off the comment with a simple roll of my eyes. "I am doing well, Nathan." That phrase appears to slip from your tongue repeatedly. He spoke, his voice soft yet resolute. "Do you genuinely discover yourself in that condition?" I remained motionless, the question catching me off guard and interrupting my train of thought. "What message are you aiming to express?" "I mean, I see how hard you work to hold everything together," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Who is looking after you?" The earnestness of his voice, the worry reflected in his eyes. It was overwhelming. I averted my gaze, concentrating on the magazine cradled in my hands. "I don't need anyone to take care of me," I murmured softly. "That's not true," he asserted, moving in closer. "Each person requires a companion." The gravity of his words enveloped me, and a tightness formed in my throat. I pivoted to confront him, my hands quivering ever so slightly. "Nathan, what prompts you to express this?" "For the reason that you matter to me," he stated plainly. The room was enveloped in an uncanny stillness, the atmosphere thick with an unidentifiable tension that hung between us. "You shouldn't," I whispered, my voice trembling. "What holds us back?" he inquired, his voice soft and soothing. "Simply isn't right," I declared. A tightness grips my chest. "Because I am your stepmother." Nathan shook his head, a faint, bittersweet smile lingering at the edges of his lips. "That does not change how I feel," he whispered softly. The authenticity in his voice, the nuanced yet resolute conviction, it was completely enchanting. I turned my eyes away, gripping the edge of the couch tightly as I tried to steady myself. "Nathan, this cannot happen," I said, my voice trembling. He lingered in silence before answering, and when his words finally came, they flowed gently, almost like a whisper. He acknowledged its complexity, yet that does not mean it is devoid of genuineness. His words hung in the air, and I felt my resolve starting to waver. I found myself driven to challenge him, to declare that he was in error. And to stop this before it got completely out of hand. Yet the truth, the inescapable truth I found difficult to accept, even in the depths of my own thoughts, was that he was, indeed, correct. As night fell, the strain that had built up over the course of the day reached a breaking point. I tried to set it aside, losing myself in the culinary endeavors of preparing dinner. The kitchen had always been my refuge. The consistent sound of vegetables being chopped, the alluring hiss of oil hitting the pan, offered me a point of focus, a concrete aspect to take charge of. Yet this evening, even that seemed inadequate. Nathan appeared in the doorway just as I was setting the table. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, his expression softer than it had been earlier. "Do you need help?" he asked. I shook my head, my eyes focused intently on the plates I was carefully arranging. "Indeed, everything has been finalized." He stepped inside regardless, grasping the silverware and meticulously placing it next to the plates. His movements were deliberate and purposeful, as though he were searching for a reason to remain close by. The stillness surrounded us, dense but not unpleasant, and I found myself sneaking looks at him as he concentrated on his work. His movements exuded a captivating charm, a quiet confidence in his posture that drew the eye and made it impossible to look away. "Thank you," I whispered, breaking the silence. Nathan raised his eyes, a faint smile dancing at the corners of his mouth. "What is the intention behind this?" In my effort to provide help, I expressed myself, but the straightforwardness of my language appeared insufficient to capture the richness of my genuine intentions. Whenever he spoke, his voice carried a comforting warmth. As we convened around the table, the ambience was imbued with a sense of tranquility, and for a moment, our conversation flowed effortlessly from one subject to another. We delved into a dialogue about the finer points, his hopes for the upcoming week, a show he had just started to watch, and the current weather conditions. As the meal progressed, the easy camaraderie we enjoyed slowly deepened into something more meaningful. "You've been quiet today," he said, his voice gentle and calming. My eyes were drawn to him, startled by the sudden shift. A myriad of ideas has been dancing through my thoughts. I revealed my truth. "Would you consider sharing?" he asked, his gaze steady and unflinching. I paused, my grip on the glass growing firmer. It was nothing of consequence, I declared, yet we both understood the reality was far from that. Nathan reclined in his chair, his gaze fixed on me with a fervor that constricted my chest. "It is perfectly acceptable to have thoughts occupying your mind." He spoke in a gentle whisper. "It's not necessary to bear the weight of the world alone." His voice held a sincerity that pierced the air, and his gaze seemed to penetrate my very being. It was captivating. "I've grown accustomed to it," I remarked, attempting to maintain a nonchalant demeanor. "That doesn't mean you should be," he said, his tone resolute yet gentle. My eyes fell to the plate before me, avoiding the weight of his stare. "It's simply challenging to discuss certain matters," I murmured softly. Nathan paused before responding, and when I finally glanced up, I noticed his expression had softened, his eyes filled with understanding. "There's no need to divulge every detail to me," he commented. "If you ever find yourself in need, remember that I am here for you." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning, and I felt my breath catch. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. After we finished our meal, we moved to the living room. Nathan lounged on the couch, his head resting against the arm, while I settled into the armchair, holding a steaming mug of tea close to me. The soft glow of the lamp wrapped the room in warmth, as the distant sound of cicadas outside added a soothing rhythm to the quiet atmosphere. In an instant, Nathan's voice shattered the silence. "I recall being here with Dad," my eyes lifted suddenly, stirred by the mention of his father. "Is that so?" He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the edges of his lips. "Indeed, he frequently claimed that very spot," gesturing toward the armchair where I now found myself, immersed in the newspaper or captivated by the game. A surge of poignant reminiscence enveloped me, nestling itself deep in my heart. "He cherished this room," I whispered softly, and Nathan nodded, his expression revealing a deep sense of yearning. "I miss him," he admitted, his voice now a mere whisper. "Likewise," I whispered, the syllables quivering at the brink of my tone. For a moment, we remained in stillness, the weight of shared grief surrounding us. It was neither a burden nor a constraint. Rather, it was a tranquil, mutual understanding that linked us in a way that nothing else could. "I don't know how you did it," Nathan said suddenly, his gaze fixed intently on mine. "Excuse me?" I asked, a wave of confusion enveloping me. "He kept everything intact after he was gone," his voice infused with a sense of awe. "I teetered on the edge of chaos, and there you were, unwavering, a beacon for me and for everyone around us." The sincerity in his voice and the deep respect evident in his gaze were completely enchanting. "I had no choice left," I whispered softly. "It was only a matter of time before someone stepped up to the challenge." "Indeed," he remarked, his voice gentle, "yet that doesn't mean it was easy." I turned my eyes away, a tightness forming in my chest. I acknowledged that it was not. Nathan positioned himself, leaning in with his elbows perched on his knees. "You don't always have to carry the burden of strength," he whispered gently. The words hit me with an unexpected force, and I could sense the prick of unshed tears in my eyes. "Nathan," I found myself hesitating, wrestling with the perfect words to convey my ideas. He reached out, his hand brushing softly against mine as it rested on the arm of the chair. The connection was brief yet grounding, offering a sense of stability I hadn't realized I longed for. "I'm here," he whispered softly. The grace of his words, the quiet confidence in his tone, it captivated the senses. I nodded, speechless, letting the silence wrap around us again. As the night deepened, an unspoken tension surrounded us, thickening the air with an indescribable energy. Unvoiced sentiments hung in the air, but I felt an unspoken connection in our shared understanding. The house was shrouded in silence when I stirred later that night, wrapped in a stillness that clung to my skin, amplifying each creak of the floorboards and every murmur of the wind outside. Reclining in bed, I found my gaze drawn to the ceiling as Nathan's words reverberated in my thoughts, playing on a loop. Your presence has been noted. My emotions for you are more profound than you could possibly realize. The weight in my chest was profound, a complex tapestry of feelings that slipped through my fingers. His words radiated warmth, yet they subtly suggested an underlying peril, an unspoken invitation that filled me with doubt about my willingness to accept it. As I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my bare feet touched the coolness of the floor below. Sleep slipped through my fingers, as my mind churned in an unending storm. Clad in my robe, I made my way down the stairs, craving a cup of tea to calm the storm stirring inside me. The kitchen was enveloped in a soft twilight, with the faint glow from the under-cabinet lights casting gentle shadows that waltzed across the countertops. I moved gracefully through the stillness, mindful of preserving the peace that surrounded me. As I extended my hand toward the kettle, a soft rustle of footsteps drew my focus. Surprised, I glanced over to find Nathan standing in the doorway. In his quest for solace, he asked, his voice low and deliberate. I shook my head, my fingers resting on the kettle's surface. No way. As he stepped into the room, his words lingered, suspended in the atmosphere. He slipped into a casual t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair artfully tousled, his expression softened by the dim light. We remained in that moment, the silence surrounding us, heavy yet not unwelcome. Would you like to enjoy a cup of tea? I elongated my phrases, my voice barely lifting above a murmur. He tilted his head, leaning against the counter as I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The gentle hum of the burner filled the space, creating a delicate ambience that contrasted sharply with the intense atmosphere lingering between us. What ideas fill your thoughts? Nathan asked after a moment, his tone gentle but curious. My gaze flicked to him, startled by the question. Could you please elaborate on your point? You've been distant, he noted, carefully choosing his words since the evening meal. It has been this way since earlier today, indeed. I turned my eyes away, focusing intently on the kettle as though it held the mysteries of existence within its confines. I have been reflecting deeply, I whispered softly. Could you clarify what you mean? He continued, his voice steady and resolute. In a fleeting moment of stillness, my fingers gripped the edge of the counter with a firm intensity. As I finally admitted, the words trembled as they escaped my mouth, reminiscent of our own fragile connection. Nathan held his silence for a moment, and when I finally turned to him, his expression was an impenetrable facade. What will our fate be? He asked, his tone steady and resolute. A shiver slipped from my lips as my chest tightened. Nathan, this situation is complex, and I feel uncertain about how to approach it. He moved forward, every step deliberate and purposeful. It needn't be, he whispered softly. Indeed, it does, I responded quickly, my voice quivering. For it goes beyond simple feelings. Rules and boundaries are present and must be recognized. Unyielding limits that stand strong against reality. He interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. What truth do you refer to? That I care about you, he murmured, inching even closer. I see you, genuinely see you, in a way that I think no one else has in a long while. His words hit me like a sudden impact, and I felt tears welling at the corners of my eyes. You shouldn't say things like that, I whispered, my voice trembling with feeling. What holds us back? He asked gently. Could it be that they possess truth? I turned my gaze away, unable to withstand the intensity of his look. The intensity in his eyes, the raw vulnerability in his voice, the heaviness of the moment was all-consuming. Nathan, I began, my voice quivering. Just as I was nearing the end of my thoughts, he reached out, his fingertips lightly brushing against my arm. The steady warmth of the touch anchored me, grounding me in the midst of the sensation of impending disintegration. Words are unnecessary, he whispered softly. I kindly ask that you include me. His voice carried a subtle yearning, and the sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. It fractured a piece of my essence. The tears flowed freely, relentless and unwavering. Before I knew it, I was inching forward, my head bowing as I fought to catch my breath. Nathan moved with unwavering resolve. He wrapped me in his arms, his embrace radiating a soothing warmth, and I clung to him as though he were my sole refuge. It's all right, he murmured, his voice a soft whisper caressing my hair. One is never genuinely alone. The words broke me completely, and I cried against his chest, the weight of everything I had been holding back finally pouring out. After a considerable period, I felt the deep impact of being authentically acknowledged and sincerely listened to. As Nathan held me close, his touch gentle and his presence unwavering, I permitted myself to consider, if only briefly, that maybe I didn't have to shoulder the burden alone. The house lay in a shroud of silence, punctuated solely by the gentle, steady ticking of the clock affixed to the wall. Nathan's arms wrapped around me, a constant warmth that grounded my essence, leaving me motionless. His embrace surrounded me like a protective cocoon, a stronghold of stability, implying that letting go would mean the potential for complete disintegration. It appears that you've been shouldering this weight for a considerable period, haven't you? He asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I pressed against him, the words tangled within me, struggling to escape. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself, he whispered, his fingers gently drawing small circles on my back. You never accomplished that. His words wrapped around me, deep and unavoidable. For a long time, I convinced myself that real strength was found in silently enduring everything. In Nathan's embrace, I felt the weight begin to ease, the cracks in my defenses widening. As I finally pulled away, his hands lingered on my arms, his touch grounding me in that moment. I looked up at him, my breath hitching at the intensity in his gaze. Thank you, I whispered, my voice trembling with feeling. No need for thanks, he replied, his voice carrying a mix of strength and warmth. I want you to know that you are not alone in this, I truly care about you. His gaze upon me, unwavering and determined, tightened the grip around my chest. In his gaze, there was no judgment or hesitation, only a deep sense of quiet understanding. I took a shaky breath, stepping back to put some distance between us. I should really get that tea ready, I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. Nathan stayed quiet while I turned back to the counter, but his eyes stayed fixed on me, the atmosphere heavy with unexpressed tension. As I interacted with the kettle, my hands trembled ever so slightly as I poured the hot water over the tea bags. You don't have to talk about it, he said after a moment, his voice cutting through the silence. Nevertheless, I have faith that you recognize my position as I patiently await your readiness. I inhaled deeply, battling the tears that threatened to spill over once again. I comprehend, I responded gently, and that holds a significance you might not entirely realize. I extended a mug toward him, our fingers brushing softly for an instant as he took it from me. The touch sparked a quiver inside me, leading to an instinctive withdrawal of my hand, anxious about the truths that could dance across my face. Thank you, he whispered, his tone soft and soothing. We moved into the living room, settling into our usual spots, with me on the couch and Nathan comfortably situated in the armchair. The soft glow of the lamp cast elongated shadows throughout the room, and the warm cup of tea in my hands provided a comforting escape from the weight of his presence. For a moment, we remained in stillness, the hush around us filled with an indescribable quality. His gaze was intense, a wordless inquiry that awakened something profound inside me, causing my heartbeat to race in an unforeseen surge. Do you transform when you're in my presence? Nathan interjected suddenly, breaking the silence. My eyes darted upward, caught off guard. Could you clarify what you mean? He shrugged, his eyes steady and resolute. You let down your guard, exposing a softer aspect of yourself. The comment ignited a gentle blush across my face, causing me to look away, my attention drawn to the delicate wisps of steam rising from my cup. I murmured. That is not accurate. It is, he declared, his voice gentle yet firm. You don't have to hide from me. Pretense is unnecessary. His tone carried a sincerity that, combined with a quiet resolve, awakened a profound yearning inside me. For an extended period, I have been existing in a facade. I let it slip, the words tumbling out before I had a chance to hold them back. Nathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his eyes locked onto mine with unwavering focus. What is the motivation for this? It is undeniably more convenient, I whispered softly, for if I permit myself to fully embrace every emotion, I worry I might lose the fortitude to carry on. You don't have to keep everything inside, he said, his voice steady and calm. Not beside me, I looked back at him, a tightening sensation in my chest from the intensity of his gaze. The space between us felt almost painfully small, even without our bodies touching, and I could feel the weight of everything left unspoken pressing heavily upon me. You present it as if it's effortless, I remarked, my voice trembling with doubt. It might be, he said, a faint smile dancing at the corners of his mouth. It seems you might be overcomplicating matters unnecessarily. A quivering laugh slipped from my lips, the sound wavering in my throat. You seem unaware of the depth of what you're asking from me. With a calm earnestness, he encouraged you to welcome happiness. The genuine quality of his voice, the softness in his eyes, it swept me off my feet. I turned my eyes away, my fingers tightening around the mug that sat in my lap. You deserve that, he continued, his voice now filled with a softer, more tender warmth. Now is the moment to fully embrace the vibrancy of existence again. His words hit me like a punch, and I could sense the tears rising again. I blinked rapidly, striving to hold back the tears. As I lifted my eyes to connect with his, I noticed a profound tenderness in his expression. It's okay, he whispered gently. At this moment, there's no urgency to make any decisions, simply put. I kindly ask that you include me. The sincerity in his voice, coupled with a delicate vulnerability, ignited a profound longing in my heart. I will not, I whispered, my voice quivering. Nathan lounged, his gaze locked onto me, but he opted not to explore further. The tension that once characterized our existence has shifted, morphing into a subtle force, both fragile and steadfast. After what felt like an endless stretch of time, a wave of relief enveloped me, granting me the chance to take a deep breath at last. The storm drew near that evening, the rain starting as a soft murmur against the windows, slowly intensifying into a fierce, authoritative rhythm. The distant thunder rumbled, a profound and soothing resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. In the stillness of the kitchen, I caught myself staring into the dimly lit stretch of the sky, my hands absent-mindedly drying the last dish. The residence radiated a distinctive warmth, as lights cast a golden hue throughout the tranquil spaces. Still, it did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. Nathan had dedicated most of the evening to the living room, where the soft murmur of the television floated gently through the spaces. I found myself avoiding him, not out of spite, I reminded myself, but rather because I yearned for the quiet to collect my thoughts. Still, no matter how hard I tried to distance myself, his words from the night before reverberated endlessly in my thoughts. You have the opportunity to embrace the excitement of life again. The truth's weight had settled deep within me, an inescapable burden I could no longer ignore. For what felt like an eternity, I struggled to convince myself that my emotions were trivial, that my desires lacked importance, that they were simply afterthoughts woven into the vast tapestry of existence. However, Nathan had grasped the reality beneath it, and now it was a vision I could never remove from my thoughts. Footsteps reverberated in the air behind me, urging me to pivot quickly. Nathan lingered in the doorway, his hair shimmering with droplets, reminiscent of a recent wash. He donned a plain black t-shirt and sweatpants, a casual ensemble that conveyed a deeper message. He seemed relaxed, tranquil. Yet there remained a quiet intensity in his gaze that sent a shiver down my spine. Is everything okay? He asked, his voice scarcely rising above a murmur. I gave a slight nod and redirected my attention to the sink. Truly, just organizing things. You've been in here for quite a while, he said, stepping into the room. I admitted that I needed something to fill my time, my hold on the dish towel tightening with each passing moment. Nathan leaned against the counter, his arms crossed over his chest. You've been avoiding me, he murmured, his voice a mix of softness and determination. I remained motionless, my breath caught for a fleeting moment. Haven't you? He interjected, though his tone carried no trace of reproach. I genuinely appreciate your viewpoint, yet I hope you might take a moment to reflect on it again. I cast a sidelong look at him, a tightness gripping my chest. Nathan, this situation is complex. I see your point, he said, stepping closer, but avoiding it won't make things any easier. The authenticity in his voice and the quiet resolve in his eyes were deeply touching. All I seek is your permission to enter, nothing more. His words shattered something within me, and before I could gather my thoughts, I found myself exclaiming, I'm scared. Nathan's brow furrowed with worry as he approached, his hand reaching out to gently graze my arm. Could you clarify what you mean? Amidst it all, I found my voice, quivering with the weight of the implications, pondering how this might be perceived by others, and what might transpire if I dared to fully embrace this feeling. Nathan's fingers wrapped softly around my arm, his touch grounding me in the present. Do you think I lack fear too? He asked, his voice gentle but firm. I looked up at him, surprised by the raw emotion that danced in his eyes. He admitted that this had been on his mind every day since he came back. It contemplates its meaning, what it uncovers about me, about us, yet the one undeniable truth I consistently revisit is its genuineness. This is the emotion I hold for you, it is real, and I trust you can feel it too. His words wrapped around me, leaving me breathless, my heart pounding with such fervor that clear thoughts faded into the background. Nathan, please tell me I'm mistaken, he whispered, his gaze searching my own, and I will stop, I will walk away right now, and I will never bring it up again. I opened my mouth, but the words stayed lodged in my throat. An overwhelming need to articulate my feelings surged within me, compelling me to dismiss everything that had occurred, to seek resolution before it unraveled further. However, I discovered that I could not proceed, for he was certainly correct. Instead of speaking, I raised my hand, my fingers trembling as they brushed against his cheek. The warmth of his skin, the way he leaned into my touch, was enough to completely unravel me. Nathan moved swiftly and decisively. He closed the distance between us, his hand softly cupping my face as our lips connected. The kiss unfolded softly, a tentative meeting of lips, as though he were presenting me with one last chance to pull away. Nevertheless, I held back. Instead, I leaned in closer, my fingers clutching the fabric of his shirt as the kiss deepened. The world receded into the periphery, the storm outside diminished to a soft murmur. The sole element of importance was the feeling of his lips on mine, the way his hands grounded me, as if he could perceive my looming descent. As we finally parted, our breaths came in uneven gasps, our foreheads lingering in a soft connection. Nevertheless, it is ours. The weight of his words, the steady confidence in his voice, awakened a profound, indescribable longing in my heart. A renewed sense of vitality coursed through me after an extended period of time. The morning revealed itself slowly, as the delicate light of dawn filtered into the room, enveloping everything in tender shades of gray and gold. Reclining in bed, I found my gaze drawn to the ceiling, where the memories of the previous night played out in my mind with striking clarity. Nathan's touch, his voice, the way he looked at me as if I were the only treasure in the world. The air was thick, enveloping the quiet with an undeniable weight. I recognized that I should feel a sense of regret. A quiet sense of regret stirred within me, illuminating the missteps we had taken. What I encountered was simply the steady beat of my heart and the gentle, cautious rise of an emotion I had kept hidden for so long, hope. As I gently rose from the cozy embrace of my bed, the coolness of the floor met my bare feet, grounding me in the present as I made my way to the kitchen. The house rested in a peaceful silence, a calmness that only the early morning light can bestow. I lost myself in the process of brewing coffee, the warm familiarity calming the storm inside me. The rich aroma of the steaming liquid filled the air as I carefully poured it into a mug, while the soft shuffle of footsteps resonated quietly behind me. Morning, Nathan murmured, his voice soft and laced with the lingering traces of slumber. I looked over to find him standing in the doorway, his hair disheveled and his t-shirt marked with the soft wrinkles of a long day. His gaze carried a softness that tightened around my heart, urging me to look away and focus on the simple task of swirling cream into my coffee. "Morning," I responded, my tone gentler than I had intended. Nathan stepped into the kitchen, leaning against the counter as his eyes remained fixed on me, searching for a moment of peace. I gently shook my head, raising the warm cup of coffee to my lips, yearning for comfort in its familiar embrace. "What about you?" he admitted, a faint smile dancing at the corners of his mouth. Last night's events lingered in my thoughts, prompting deep reflection. His words sent a shiver through me, and I set the mug down on the counter, my hands trembling just a bit. Nathan pondered the occurrences of the night before. "You don't have to say anything," he said quickly, his tone a blend of kindness and determination. "I understand that it can feel quite daunting. I want you to know that I have no regrets about it at all." His voice held a sincerity, a subtle conviction that resonated profoundly, akin to an all-encompassing tide. "I'm feeling uncertain about my next steps," I admitted, my voice trembling. "There's no need to rush into anything at this moment," he said gently. "Nonetheless, I trust you won't view this as an error." In my perspective, it definitely wasn't. In that moment, I looked at him, my heart tightening at the raw honesty mirrored in his gaze. "It's not quite that simple," I responded, my voice quivering. "I see," he said, stepping closer, "but we will get to the bottom of it." The words hung in the air, heavy and relentless, and for a fleeting moment, I felt an oppressive pressure on my chest. "Nathan, this transforms the very essence of our existence," I whispered. He suggested that it might, but then again, maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. The steady confidence in his voice, the piercing focus of his eyes as if he possessed unshakable belief in each word, was enough to unsettle my resolve. With my eyes firmly closed, I let out a shaky breath. I whispered softly, "My intention not to inflict any hurt upon you." "You're not," he whispered, his fingers softly brushing against mine. "You couldn't do it." The warmth of his touch and the steadiness of his presence wrapped around me, creating an overwhelming sensation that hung in the air. As I opened my eyes, our gazes intertwined, and for a brief moment, the world around us dissolved into nothingness. Yet, as the weight of reality enveloped me, I retracted my hand, the void left by his absence instilling a deep sense of emptiness within. "I need a moment," I whispered, my voice trembling. Nathan tilted his head, a soft glow illuminating his expression. "Take all the time you need," he said. "I have no intention of leaving." His words wrapped around me like a promise, fragile yet unwavering. I nodded, my voice swallowed by the stillness that surrounded us. Later that morning, after Nathan had left for a walk, I found myself by the window with my coffee, looking out at the garden. The storm of the night before had left the world glistening and fresh, as the sun broke through the clouds, sending soft, golden rays dancing over the scenery. The house radiated a transformed ambience, a heavy stillness enveloping it, as if it were holding its breath in expectation, reflecting on the countless occurrences that had intertwined to lead me to this precise moment, which occupied my mind. The relentless march of time, accompanied by the quiet ache of traversing life alone, devoid of a comforting presence to lean on. Nathan's presence awakened a deeply buried emotion within me, something I had hidden so well that I had not even realized it was there. But what was its importance? What does it say about me that I permitted it to develop, that I did not step in when I should have? I ran my fingers along the edge of the table, the precise spot where everything had changed forever. The weight in my chest was tangible, laden with guilt, fear, yearning, and a delicate, elusive hope that slipped through my fingers. It seems that Nathan may have been right after all. Perhaps I do not need to have all the answers right now. Maybe it was enough to simply feel the emotions. When Nathan came back, the tension that had existed between us faded, turning quieter and gentler, like the peace that settles after a tempest. He held back from pressing me, held back from pursuing the answers I was not ready to provide. Instead, he simply sat beside me, the quiet bond we shared infusing the stillness with a deep sense of connection. As the day progressed, my mind transitioned from the impending challenges to the boundless opportunities that awaited me. As I ponder the potential of welcoming happiness back into my life, I find myself navigating a path filled with uncertainty, its complexities both daunting and intriguing. The future stretched ahead, cloaked in uncertainty. Yet, when Nathan's hand brushed against mine, a faint smile tugging at the edges of his lips, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. Expectation,